there were so many things we didn't think of when my wife and I considered moving to Summerville, South Carolina. You blew it! And I know what you're thinking. Well, Ryan, you seem to know a lot now. Yeah, because hindsight's 2020, right? Well, Summerville, South Carolina, it's charming, it's historic, and it's growing like crazy. I mean, the word's out. Everybody knows about it. And honestly, it's easy to see why people are packing up and heading this way. But let me tell you, moving here without doing your homework, today I'm going to be breaking down the biggest mistakes people make when moving to Summerville, South Carolina. Things that could cost you time, cost you money, and even your sanity. So stick around because some of these things might surprise you. Let's start with the number one complaint I hear from people who move here: traffic. Summerville is a growing town, and while that's great for home values, it's not always great for your commute. Here's some of the biggest places that you're gonna run into issues are in and around Summerville. So the I-26, which is the main highway that runs from downtown Charleston to Summerville, can be an absolute rush hour madness. Think you'll get to Charleston in 30 minutes? Yeah, back in the old days, but not if it's 8 a.m. or 5 p.m. You have to remember a lot of people are commuting to Charleston, to Mount Pleasant, to Johns Island, James Island, and a lot of those people, for affordability reasons, live in Summerville. You know, most people who work in Mount Pleasant don't technically live in Mount Pleasant. So if you can believe it, people sometimes their morning commutes can go anywhere from, you know, a good 30 minutes to could be an hour and a half. And if you're leaving at 8 a.m., you can pretty much plan to be in that mix. The other thing you should also consider is at 5 p.m., coming from Charleston to Summerville, it is a nightmare. And I got to tell you, I used to make this drive before a lot of these developments were in, and it was bad then. And it's worse now. But that's why I always recommend the app Waze. Waze, W-A-Z-E. You can download this on any app store. But this will help you navigate through and around a lot of that traffic. So sometimes when I'm driving from a place and I know where I'm going, I'll just put the address in because it'll auto reroute me to a location or a direction or a roadway that'll take me around the traffic. Yeah, it might take me out a little bit, but I'm not going to be sitting in that traffic the entire time. Another biggest issue location is Main Street and Berlin G. Myers. The word of the week for these two roadways is bottleneck. Ooh. Berlin G. Myers Parkway and Main Street, just bottlenecks, and weekends and school traffic can be an absolute nightmare. Next on the big issue place for traffic is Nexton Parkway and Cane Bay Boulevard. The new traffic patterns here are just making people go crazy, and the new developments, the more people moving in, the more congestion. Ask people who have moved to Midtown how they enjoy making a left out of the community. I guarantee you're not going to hear some good things. But the streetlights are coming. 2027, they're going to double and actually widen Nexton Parkway. So the problems are temporary, but you kind of got to live through the growing pains. So it's just something to be aware of. Now, how to avoid the mistake, right? Like if you're commuting, test drive your route at peak hours. This is really going to give you, if you're like, hey, Ryan, I work here. This is where my new office is going to be, or this is where, you know, I have to go every day into work. Then whatever neighborhood you're considering, test drive it. Yeah, just like you would test drive a car. Test drive the commute. See what it's like. See if you like it. Go at 8 o'clock in the morning. Go at 5 p.m. This is something that should really make you consider where you live in Summerville. I have people all the time that just think Summerville is like this big, right? And they're like, oh, yeah. No, Summerville is more like this. It is massive, folks. And it is just going to get bigger. And I know people always say to me, well, what do you mean by that, Ryan? Well, parts of Cane Bay that were Monk's Corner at one point in time oddly got rezoned to Summerville. They just extended that zip code a little bit. So things like that can happen here. Now, consider homes near alternative roads like Jedburgh Road, Sheep Island Road. There's other places that you can, and even like if you live on the Summers Corner side, 61 may be actually better for you than trying to get to 26 and then get to downtown. Sometimes people will take 17, go all the way out to Savannah Highway and then in. You know, it's just, there are alternative ways to go. You just have to be kind of familiar with them, and you're not going to get familiar until you download the app Waze and start actually driving and experiencing them for yourself. So neighborhoods like Cane Bay, Nexton, Carnes Crossroads generally have more congestion than older neighborhoods. So if you work in Charleston, you'll need to build in that extra time because, let's be real, you're going to be sitting in traffic a lot. All right, guys, if you absolutely love the content you're seeing right now, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, click that notification bell so every time I upload a new video, well, you get notified. I'm Ryan McHugh, your neighborhood expert. If you're thinking about moving and relocating here, and you're planning a move or a relocation here, give me a call. Don't call anyone else, just call me. I'm your guy. YouTube doesn't pay me anything. By buying a house, you guys compensate me. By the builders. So kudos, you guys don't have to pay me anything out of pocket. Now, jumping back into our list, number 2, ignoring flood zones and insurance costs. So yeah, guys, if anything, if I tell you anything, no two areas are created equal. There are some neighborhoods that have flood zones that you're going to be required to carry flood insurance. And then there's areas that are flood zone X, which is what most people want. You're not required to carry flood insurance, but if you do, it's a lot less expensive. Now, let's talk about flood zones. So if you're coming from out of state, this might not even be on your radar. But here in Summerville, South Carolina, and really anywhere in the Low Country, it's something you just can't ignore. Here's what a lot of newcomers miss. Many neighborhoods in Summerville aren't in high risk zones, but some still flood, okay? In areas near the Ashley River or low-lying properties may require flood insurance. So if you live in an area that has a lot of wetlands and things like that, you might have to carry flood insurance. And a house can be in a preferred flood zone, but still have a history of flooding. And what does that mean? Well, it could be in an X zone, but have flooded in the history. Because sometimes we get these 100-year, 500-year storms, and well, guess what? Things flood, regardless of how safe it is. So what does this mean for you if you're looking to move here? Well, flood insurance can range from anywhere from $500 if you're not required to carry flood insurance to over $2,000 a year, depending on your location. And you probably are required to carry flood insurance if it's $2,000 a year. Now, if you don't buy it and later need it, guess what? You're out of luck because they are not going to backdate it. They are not going to, a name storm is going to come up and you're going to call your insurance company and be like, hey, I want to get flood insurance. I see that storm rolling up there like, too late, sucker. That's what they're going to do to you. So always check the FEMA flood maps. This is one of my biggest pieces of advice. This is what I did before we really looked at our area and neighborhood. I was on there like, all right, we do not want to flood. We do not want to be underwater. So one of my biggest piece of advice is to buyers is we want to ask the seller. So when you reach out to me and we're working together, I'm going to ask the seller about past flooding. I'm even going to request a clue report. And that's basically a history of insurance claims. Because I'm not saying the sellers are going to lie, but a lot of them aren't always as transparent as you'd like. So if we ask for a clue report, that's going to give us a history of any insurance claims that were on that home. Better safe than sorry. Now moving on, number 3. Yes, you definitely want to do all of your homework on these next things. So are you thinking about an HOA? Are all HOAs the same? No, they're not. HOAs, some people love them, some people downright hate them.
This is the worst.
But if you're moving to Summerville, you need to know no two HOAs are alike. So what are some common HOA mistakes? Well, so assuming all neighborhoods have low fees, some are under $100 a year and some are over $2,000 a year. Now, the ones that are $100 a year, they're literally just charging you that to keep appearances and make sure that the little light bulb that they have at the front sign stays lit all year long. And then the other one, the $2,000 a year, boy, those could be whether you're in a 55 plus adult gated community, those could be neighborhoods that are a little bit closer to water. I was recently at one that was $1,900 a year and it had a deep water dock. Pretty nice, And so if you're a resident to that neighborhood, you have access to that. You pay into that HOA as a part of it. So it's just something to consider. Not every HOA is going to be the same. And here's the other thing you need to know. Not reading the fine print. Can you park a boat, put up a fence, rent your home out? A lot of people just think Summerville is created equal across the board, and it's not, guys. This is the thing. Every neighborhood is a little bit different. So I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman reach out to me because he's a big Airbnb-er. He's like, Ryan, I buy houses in different areas. I like to buy in the more popular neighborhoods and then rent the houses out. Totally makes sense. However, the neighborhood we were looking at, I explained to him this neighborhood does not allow Airbnb. And he's like, most of them don't, but I do it anyways. And I'm like, I would highly bet against that, but okay. And he's just pretty confident. He's like, Ryan, you know I can do it. No big deal. Nobody's gonna call me in. I'm like, okay. Fast forward 6 months, and he reached out to me and he's like, hey, what's up with this HOA? Like, they're sending people to my house. They're knocking on my door. I said, yeah, because that's what they do. You think it's the same because you've experienced HOAs in other parts of the country that may not have been as tight, or, you know, it may have been a little bit more lenient on those things, but not here. These HOAs, I'll tell you, if you're really thinking about doing something like that, check the HOAs, because the last thing you want to do is have somebody, an HOA, put a lien on your home. So when you go to sell, you have to pay that off. And that can be quite expensive. So take it from me. All right. The other thing to consider is thinking that all HOAs enforce rules the same way. Some let things slide. Others send warning letters for a trash can left out overnight. And then others will just straight up send you a $100 fine, whether you like it or not. And trust me, this has happened to me. My wife and I, when we first moved here, we bought some rocking chairs. They were this nice, like, you know, Carolina blue color, really pretty. We had them out on our front porch, and within 2 or 3 days of having them out there, we saw a car slowly go by our house, and then we were like, that's weird. They just kind of backed up, looked like they took a picture. And then a few days later, we get a $100 fine in the mail because of these blue chairs, which was against the HOA's color code in our neighborhood. So apparently you can only do boring ass colors in our neighborhood because the HOA sucks. So, you know, that's the kind of crap they go after.
Who the f are you?
What are you gonna do? But that's why I say you gotta read the fine print. So how to avoid HOA surprises. So request all of the HOA documents prior to closing. This is something I do with my clients. I ask for copies of the covenants and restrictions. I had one client who has a motorcycle, so he was concerned about, you know, the noise factor of that. Is that gonna be something that he would get fined for? But great question, honestly. But you wanna check online neighborhood Facebook groups as well. So this is something that I was trying to do for a client recently. Joined a neighborhood Facebook group page, and the leader of it was another realtor, and she was not happy I was in there. She thought I was there to promote my business, but in actuality, I was trying to help my client answer some questions about the covenants and restrictions. But again, this is the kind of stuff that you want to make sure you're doing prior to closing, or even prior to putting an offer in. Now, the other thing you want to do is ask about hidden fees, move-in fees, assessments, capital contributions. So some HOAs have a welcome to the neighborhood fee. It's about $1,000 on average, depending on what neighborhood you're looking in. Some neighborhoods, it can be $2,000. So again, it's just something to really focus on. If you are somebody who's worried about additional costs like district improvement tax, we'll have that conversation. I make it pretty apparent when I'm working with you that we're gonna go over all that. I'm gonna cover all that information so that you don't get surprised at the closing table, right? And a lot of people buy in an HOA community thinking it's all rainbows and unicorns, and then they get their first violation letter. Read the rules, people. Read the rules. Here's the next one, pretty important, not researching school districts. So even if you don't have kids, school zones can affect your home value. But if you do have kids, this can even be crucial, right? So what do people get wrong? They assume all schools in Summerville are the same. They're not, folks. You got to do your due diligence. The other thing to consider is they don't check zoning changes. So your home could be rezoned to a different school. This is a perfect example that happened in Cane Bay. part of Cane Bay got rezoned. The builder was building it out, and they said, well, this street right here is the cutoff. So every home that you build from here on out, it's gonna be a different school zone. So people were pretty caught off guard by this. Just say people were pissed off by this. And to be honest, I understand, I get it. But this is why you need somebody, a reputable realtor, who can help you and make sure we understand where the school zones are and how to best give you that information. The other thing people don't do, and I think it's a miss, is they don't consider charter or private school options. So Berkeley has its own private charter school. Dorchester has their own charter school. And so you're seeing these pop up all over the place, and they're really a great option. And even the private schools here, Pinewood, Northwoods, they're really great and fantastic options no matter what side of town you live on. So people always ask me, well, Ryan, how do we research a school? So you can use a lot of various websites. Greatschools.org is a good area for information. Niche.com is good for ratings. But ultimately, visit in person. A 5-star school on paper might not match your expectations. And if schools matter, then check future rezoning plans before buying. That's one thing I always tell everybody. Had some people last year move into Karns Crossroads prior to their new school opening, and their kids were going to Cane Bay, now rezoned to Carolyn Lewis. At first, they thought it was the end of the world because they loved Cane Bay, but in hindsight, you know, they now really love Carolyn Lewis. And so, not to say that if rezoning happens, it's not for the better, but you know, you got to be aware of it. It does happen here. I always tell parents, and especially those that you've reached out to me because we have, you know, we share a common interest. Like I have 5 kids, you usually have 2, 3, 4. I haven't got anybody that's been 5 or 6 kids yet. Actually, that's a lie. I did have somebody last year. But I always tell parents, don't trust the real estate listing when it says great schools.
Meaning?
Do your own research. A real estate listing that says great schools is like saying, this home is intriguing and beautiful and entering and vibrant, all those adjectives that they don't mean jack at the end of the day. Either you like the home in the neighborhood or you don't. That's the reality. Okay, moving on. This might sound funny, but a lot of people move here thinking Summerville is just Charleston's backyard. But Summerville has its own vibe, culture, and pace. Here's some big differences between Charleston and Summerville. 1, Charleston is coastal, Summerville is suburban. No beaches here, folks, okay? Downtown Summerville is charming, but it's small. It's nowhere in comparison to how massive downtown Charleston is, and then the nightlife scene. There's really not a crazy nightlife scene here. The restaurant scene is growing, but again, it's not Charleston, it's not Mount Pleasant. So, you know, the next question is Summerville right for you? If you love a slower pace, small town charm, and affordability, then check that yes box. But if you want a fast-paced city lifestyle and you want to possibly run into Bill Murray every so often, maybe Charleston is a better fit for you. Guys, Summerville is an awesome place to live, but only if it matches your lifestyle. And this is one of the biggest conversations I have whenever I start working with someone new, is that like, what's your lifestyle? What do you want? Like because I can tell you, if you say to me, Ryan, we don't want to be anywhere near traffic. We want to be out in the middle of nowhere. We want to be 15 minutes from the beach. Okay, cool. Kiowa Island. That's where you want to go. So, you know, it really, I can get to know exactly what you're looking for from a lifestyle standpoint and align you correctly with certain areas. And again, that's just one example out of many. And there's a lot of different places here. There's a lot of different lifestyle areas and communities. So it just depends on what that looks like for you and maybe your family. Then I can help you out. If you need help finding the right home in Summerville, reach out. I'd love to help. 843-226-5535. Or if you want to see available properties now, go to www.buyfromrye.com. And if you guys want to see more great videos just like this one, go ahead and click this video right here. I'll see you guys on the next one.